right, thanks Christy for sharing your garden with us. Love that space, really beautiful. Love the plants that you choose. Right now we're going to be turning our attention to what's eating our plants. There are a lot of folks out there who worry a great deal about seeing these chomp marks on their plants. Well, we're going to help you identify what's doing that right now and the proper way to respond. Joining me is Wizzie Brown, who's with Texas A&M, the AgriLife Extension Service. She is their Integrated Pest Management Specialist, and it's great to have you back on the program.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, well, let's start off by talking about the kinds of damage people are seeing.
Sure.
There are some telltale signs whether what kind of critter is attacking the plants just by what you see when you look at the plants and see the damage, right?
Right. So a lot of times you need to put on your detective hat. If you're seeing bite marks or chewing, then those are going to have mandibular mouth parts. So things like larvae, or which those can be caterpillars or beetle larvae. You could have leaf beetles, you could have grasshoppers. The other one is piercing sucking mouth parts, and they tend to have a soda straw type mouth part, and the outer part is hardened that will puncture the plant, and then they will use that to suck the plant juices out.
And so it's easy to determine what looks chomped or chewed on.
Yes, very easy.
Now, something that has been sucked on, however, it's a little different depending on the critter, right?
Right. So a lot of times, those are things like aphids, mealybugs, scale insects, stink bugs. They will cause a yellowing of the plant. They'll cause, a lot of times, stunted growth. They can cause curling of the leaves.
Curling and mottling of the leaves, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So it just kind of looks off.
Right. So when you see these two different things, say you spy chomping. Now, you can see chomping on a leaf, holes in the leaf, or eating off edges of the leaf. That still will not tell you specifically which insect.
No, it's not going to tell you, but that's going to give you an idea of what category of insect you can look towards.
And how does that help the homeowner?
Well, some of the products that you're using work really well on chewing pests.
Okay.
And some will not work on, chewing pests, or so you can kind of divvy up what you might be using then.
Okay.
But you always want to try to look for the insect when you can.
Okay, so keep an eye out.
Yes, and sometimes you might need to go outside with a flashlight.
Ah, okay.
At
Nighttime
night.
critters. Yes. Well, certainly the snails are out at night.
Definitely.
But okay, now let's talk about integrated pest management. Is a kind of way of dealing with things, using the least toxic interventions first, and then progressively moving forward if you can't get your arms around the problem. That's my understanding of it.
Yes, exactly. That is a very good way to explain it.
Okay, all right. So let's talk about some of the systemic ways to control these critters and the best interventions that we can use.
So when you're doing a pest, always try to identify what you're dealing with first, because less than 5% of insects are considered to be pests. So a lot of the stuff that we have in the environment may be helping you eat those bugs that you don't want there, or they may just be there because they're there.
Right.
So identify if you can. The next thing, you could try things like hand picking, high pressure water sprays, vacuums, which is my personal favorite. Lots of fun to do. But then if you can't get control with some of those things that you're not using any chemicals, then you may need to go with chemicals. And in IPM, we're going to try to use the least toxic chemical. And that's where you really need to start making some wise choices when you're choosing a pesticide.
Okay. Well, we'll talk about kind of the ramp up there. I want to go back to some of the more physical means of control, just and talk a little bit about that. I find, frankly, that the hard jet of water is probably what I use 90% of the time.
Me as well.
Yeah,
I do that a lot.
I mean, and it's not. It's easy to do,
Right.
and it's worry-free, and I think it's like it's not 100% effective. But for a lot of critters, it's like, 75 or 90%, somewhere in that range.
Right. When you're using high pressure water sprays, it's not going to work on like full grown grasshoppers or great big June bugs or something like that. But when you're talking about a lot of the pests that we do have, things like aphids, mealybugs, whiteflies, hose those off the plant with a high pressure water and, they're gone. You're going to damage their exoskeleton. Not all of them are going to find their way back to the plant. So it's a great way to control them without pesticides.
Very simple way to do it. And my next step up typically in my integrated plan is typically insecticidal soap. If it,
Yes.
you know,
Yes, the thing that you need to know about insecticidal soap, use the insecticidal soap formulation. It is tested, you know you're not going to kill your plant, and make sure that you're targeting the actual insect. It's going to work best on small, soft-bodied insects, but what you hit at that point in time is what you're going to kill because there isn't going to be a residual left behind.
Sure. And actually, you need to be careful about residual in the sense
Yes.
on your plants, right?
Yes, exactly. So if you're working to conserve those beneficials that are helping you out, having those things with shorter residuals is really going to help you.
And with insecticidal soap, I worry about a lot of the soaps that people use kind of frying their plants if they do it in the full sun. So I always advise do it in the evening, spray the plants then when you can, or the insects more specifically then, and then in the morning come through, just wash it off.
Right, and that's a great idea. Usually when you're using any of the naturally derived things or insecticidal soaps or some of those less toxic products, it's best to apply them in the evening. That way you don't have the sun, the heat, the humidity breaking that stuff down rapidly. And you know it's actually there for the insects to kill them. Okay.
Well, let's talk about if you determine you have a problem that really does require some sort of chemical control. What are the kind of the ladder steps for integrated pest management that you would take?
So generally when I'm thinking about things, I figure out what I have, what problem I have, and then there are some products that are really specific. If you're using like a BT Kerstaki, that targets caterpillars only. It's not going to target your good caterpillars from your bad caterpillars,
Right.
but caterpillars.
Right.
Spinosad products work really great on things that are going to be chewing pests, so stuff that eats lots of foliage.
Grasshoppers, for example.
Right, exactly. Grasshoppers, leaf beetles, caterpillars, that sort of thing. But Spinosad will kill bees, so if you're using that, do not use it when it's active for bees foraging. You can put it on in the evening, and then once that product's dry on the plant, it'll be okay for the bees to come to the flowers.
Okay.
So it's just... you got to be careful.
So bees go to bed at night?
Yes, they do. They stop foraging at some point. So then the next step up, you know, more naturally derived stuff, but they start becoming broader spectrum. They can kill some of the beneficials as well. So you do have to do targeted treatments there. You don't have to spray your entire backyard. Okay. Treat the area that you need to treat.
Okay. Well, let's talk about some specific critters.
Okay.
June bugs.
Yes.
I've never thought of June bugs as being pests, but their grubs are terrible.
They can be, depending on what species you're dealing with. Some of them, you know, we really don't see problems with. We have those great big giant ones that people get in compost piles. Leave them there, they're doing a great thing. But we do get some that are in turf that can really cause brown patches in the turf. And in that case, you would need to do something about them.
Right. And there, I've always found beneficial nematodes are a great way to go.
Beneficial nematodes can certainly work on them, but you really need to make sure that the soil temperature is at the right temperature and that it has enough moisture for those nematodes to move through there. So it depends on when you're treating. Typically, when you're treating for the larvae of the June bugs here, that's mid-July through August. So you would need to irrigate on a regular basis if you're applying nematodes.
Okay, that's a smart tip. Let's talk about katydids. Sure. You know, a lot of people, I've never assumed they're harmful in any way.
Katydids are just very similar to grasshoppers, so they will eat and chew pretty much whatever they want. Key to grasshoppers and katydids, get them when they're small. Now is when you really need to start looking for them and treating them. They can't fly away. Smaller things are easier to kill. Most people call me when they're the adult stage and they're like, what can I do? And it's like, not a whole lot.
Right. Okay.
Get them early.
Small things are easy to kill. That's, I think, the rule of the universe.
The rule of the entomologist.
Okay, and real quickly, you know, spider mites are a very common problem. Good tip for those.
Spider mites are going to be on the underside of the leaf. They're small, fairly easy to kill. They come out when it's hot and dry. Target the underside of the leaf where they're located.
And this is true for a lot of critters. You got to look on the underside of the leaves. That's where they're hiding.
White flies, aphids, spider mites.
They see you coming.
Exactly.
Okay, well, thank you so much for being with us. And right now we're going to turn our program over to our friend Daphne.